What's up, guys? Blaine Duncan here from Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. Welcome to episode number 63. And as you can see, I'm flying solo today. Well, solo for now, because Austin and I are going to do things a little bit differently this week. We had some scheduling conflicts. We couldn't get together and find a time that worked for both of us to record. But we had this awesome idea that we wanted to do. And we thought, we're still going to roll with it. We're still going to do this thing. The only difference is I'm going to record the first half of the episode and Austin's going to record the second half. So for this episode, you guys are going to get to see myself and Austin talking about the best and worst kills of the original John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. We're going to give you our rank, I should say, our specific and favorites and see which ones fall to maybe the lower half for us. Now, one thing to mention is that there aren't a ton of kills in the original Halloween, right? I mean, we know this. As a matter of fact, there's only 5. There's only 5 kills in the entire thing. And I think when we talk about Halloween and we talk about what that movie means to us, one of the things that I often think about is the fact that there aren't a lot of kills in this film. And that's okay, because I personally don't need Michael Myers to be this killing machine like we saw, for instance, in Halloween Kills, or maybe like we've seen in some other films like H6. I think a lot of people forget about H6. Like, Michael was brutal. He slaughtered a ton of people in that movie, and I don't need it. That's great. I can appreciate those films for what they are, and Halloween 6 is a film that I truly do love. But is it a film or do I want to see that more as we move forward with future films? No, probably not. I'm okay with Michael being a very selective killer. He's not just out killing every single person that he comes in contact with. So I think that makes Halloween, the original Halloween, that much more special. That, yes, of course, he's a slasher, he's a serial killer, but he's not going after every single person he runs into. Lonnie is a perfect example. When he sees Lonnie, as we see in this flashback scene in 1978 in Halloween Kills, he doesn't kill Lonnie, right? He could have killed Lonnie. He could have gone after him. But at that point, he was being very selective. He was that great white shark, that heat-seeking missile who was locked onto just specific targets, and he chose not to do it. So I'm going to go worst to best, or maybe my least favorite to my favorite kill in the original Halloween. But I do want to mention one very quick honorable mention, and that is the dog Lester. Lindsay's dog, Lester, R.I.P. That dog, unfortunately, met his demise by the hands of Michael Myers. Lester knew what was up. Lester knew, Annie was talking on the phone to Paul, and I think she was talking to Paul at that point. Or maybe she was talking to Lori. I guess I can't remember right now, but she was talking on the phone. She was making popcorn. She spills the butter. But at the same time, Lester's going apeshit on the outside of the house because Michael is sitting there or standing there watching as she makes this popcorn and she does her thing. So Lester knew something was up. And unfortunately, Lester, he didn't survive the film. He was a good old boy, but Michael put Lester down. And I guess there was another dog that was in the Myers house that we saw earlier on. That dog too. So Michael was hungry, but I think Michael's just killed Lester because Michael didn't want to get caught. But anyway, let's get into the real deaths from this film. So it's the first death that we actually get. I shouldn't say that. Judith Myers is the first death that we get in Halloween 1978. We see that, obviously, the opening shots of the film when Judith gets murdered. This is the first death that takes place once Michael actually escapes. And this is the Phelps garage mechanic, who is an off-screen death. We don't get to see what exactly happened to him, but we get this really iconic scene where Dr. Loomis is trying to track down where Michael went to, and he discovers this abandoned vehicle. He finds this Phelps tow truck or whatever it is. It says Phelps garage on the side of it, and Loomis knows that something weird is up here because he also finds Michael's like nightgown, hospital gown thing that he was wearing. He sees it there. And so Loomis knows that Michael had been to this exact location and that he's on his trail, and he knows he's going to Haddonfield at this point. So Loomis is trying to track him down. And this is shortly after Loomis had just made a phone call. And, once again, Loomis is doing his best to track down what's happening with Michael. And he discovers this truck, this abandoned truck. He finds the rabbit and red matchbox, or the matches, which is just really kind of a cool thing, because you got that shot earlier in the film when Marion Chambers is smoking. You see the rabbit and red matches, the packet of matches. And so he sees it, and he knows that this was Michael. What he doesn't see, however, is that the mechanic who is driving that truck he's laying dead sort of off in the weeds. And you get a very, very quick shot of him. You don't really get to see a whole lot, but you see him laying there. It looks like he's been stripped of his clothes. So obviously this is where Michael gets that, mechanic's jumpsuit, those coveralls. This is where he gets that from. And this obviously just falls to the end of my list because it's an off-screen kill. You don't really see a whole lot to what happens with this specific death scene. And it plays just such a small, it's such a small mark on this whole film because it just happens off screen, and it happens very quickly. But this is how Michael gets those coveralls. So that death to me is ultimately ranked, the lowest in this. Forgetting about Lester for a second, the Phelps mechanic death scene would be my least favorite death of this entire film. Moving on to we'll say my next favorite. We'll say it like that. We'll be optimistic here. We won't say least favorite. We'll say my next best favorite, and that is going to be none other than, and I hate to say it because I love this character, but it's the Annie death and the Annie death scene. Now, Austin and I talked a few weeks back about, was she truly the main target of Michael Myers? We see a huge portion of this film where Michael is stalking Annie. He's watching her. He's moving around the house. He sees her obviously as she's in the kitchen and she spills the butter and she's making the popcorn and all that good stuff. And then he obviously stalks her once she gets out to the little like gazebo laundry thing, the shed, whatever you want to call it, that's at this house where the laundry machine is out in the backyard. Great scenes, great imagery in this. You're just seeing this sort of shadow, this very ghost-like figure who's standing behind the door as she's in and she's doing her laundry. Very, very creepy. But the actual death scene is, I feel like in a way, we kind of got screwed a little bit on this death scene because we had a ton of buildup. And I will say the way that the death scene went down, as far as like she goes to open the car door and it's locked, and Annie realizes that, shit, I got to go get my keys. So she goes back into the house to get her keys. And when she comes back out, the door just pops open. She doesn't even think twice about it. She just opens it and she gets in. And I love that because it's so creepy. And it probably took me a really long time, watching that film over the years before it really dawned on me sort of the impact that makes, because that in itself is super creepy because what's about to happen. She doesn't know what's about to happen, but she should, if she had been sort of paying attention to the signs, if she had been realizing exactly what was happening, because the door was locked and now it's not locked. So somebody had to have unlocked the door. And I think that was like brilliant, the way that was built into this film, the way that John Carpenter or Deborah Hill, whoever wrote that specific part of that film, it's just brilliant. Like it's creepy. And you kind of like put yourself in in Annie's shoes in that situation. And then she obviously, once she opens the door, she gets in and she realizes that the car's all steamed up. And that's odd to her. That's weird. And she kind of wipes the windshield down a little bit. And that's when Michael sits up from the back seat and he strangles her. Now, when I say that I feel like we got screwed a little bit with this death scene, I think this scene in my mind is probably the fakest or one of the most fake death scenes that we got in the entire franchise, which is really unfortunate because I love the character of Annie. I love the buildup of that character throughout the whole film. But I will say that she did not sell that death scene very well. Now, I've heard rumors or I've read stories that by this point in time, that the actress who played Annie was very much over this whole thing. It was like, supposedly it was really late. It was in the middle of the night that they were filming this. She was tired. She wanted to go home, whatever it was. And there was some drama, I guess, that was happening on set that day or that night. And she was just like over it. And I don't remember the story, how the story goes exactly, but supposedly she was doing this. And I don't know, maybe she'd been asked to do this scene several times and she was just over it. But if you watch that scene, the way she dies, the way she sort of just like gives up is it's just fake to me. Like when I watch it, like her mouth is open and it's a very fake death scene. Now, I've never seen somebody get choked out and killed, I guess, in real life. So I can't say exactly how it is, but I have to believe it doesn't really look like this. The whole scene up to that point where she gets, where she actually gets killed, fantastic. But then once we get to the point where she actually dies, that's where I'm like, oh man, I feel like I'm let down a little bit. Like I wish we could take out like that final 10 seconds of that clip and just forget about it and move on, because it to me takes away from that scene, which is why it falls somewhat to the bottom of my list. So, I mean, it's second from the last, I guess. And so that's kind of where that scene or that kill lands for me. I love the buildup. I love the character, but it's just the actual kill scene or that death scene that it just kind of sucked. Like it was not well acted, and that's just where it lands for me. I mean, what do you guys think? I think we've talked about this on the show before, but what do you guys think? Do you agree that was sort of not a very good acting job? Hit us up in the comments below. Let me know. But I'm going to move on to the next scene, death scene, the next favorite of mine. So we're getting closer to the top. This is going to be so I will say these final three deaths. And now, once again, we're only at 5 for the entire film, so we can start to kind of put together where I'm going with this. But I will say that this next death scene is such an iconic, such a classic scene of quite honestly, the next 3 death scenes are classic of just like horror in general. Like these 3 scenes you see in clips of scariest moments, from horror. There was a show on like 100 best or scariest scenes from horror films or something like that. Like I remember watching that when I was a teenager, and all 3 of these were probably on this if I remember right, or were on this if I remember right. And I'm talking about the Judith Myers death scene. Now, this scene could have very easily been my favorite. The buildup, everything that's happening, you don't know who the killer is at this point. There is so much that happens here in the way that this was filmed. The Panaglide camera that was used, this opening shot, this establishing shot that you see, and we push in and we see the pumpkin and we see the Judith and her boyfriend, and they're making out on the couch because we zoom in on the window or through the window a little bit and look in. It's so great. And I know when I watch it, and I'm sure it was the way that I watched it the first time, and I've just always felt this way, like it always feels like you must be watching an adult, right? This is clearly an adult killer watching this, because never in a million years would you think, wow, this is going to end up being a 6-year-old boy. But you see Judith and her boyfriend making out, and the Michael, or the killer, I guess we don't know at this point, but the killer sort of moves back, and as the couple goes upstairs, and you see the light turn out, and you get like that classic like that piano noise that happens when the lights turn out, and they're getting it on, and then literally like 28 seconds later he comes downstairs. It was like the fastest horizontal hustle in the entire world. He comes back downstairs, and at this point, Michael's obviously, he's in the house, and he had already walked around the exterior of the house, and you see that awesome scene where he grabs the knife, and he also finds this clown mask, and he puts this clown mask on, and you see this very quickly, it switches out, and then you see Judith sitting there. She's, pretty much naked. She's combing her hair, and then she turns around and she's like, Michael. And at the same time, you get the hand that's raising up and it's stabbing down, and you're getting that awesome view of the camera showing the hand, which was Deborah Hill's hand, and this knife slamming up and down. And Sandy Johnson, who played Judith Myers, did a great job with that scene, just selling that death. And she's trying to defend herself. And then she falls to the floor. And you really get the most blood that you see throughout that whole film. You get it in this scene, like in this opening death scene of the entire film. You get it right away. And other than that, you really don't get a whole lot of blood. But then as you move, down the stairs and, it sets up that really awesome, iconic scene where, they pull the mask off and it's this 6-year-old kid standing there. It's such a shocking scene. Like, it shocks your system when you first see that. And even today, when I watch it, it's like almost impossible to imagine something like this happening. But unfortunately, like, this is the kind of shit, like, in the real world, stuff like this sadly does happen. And, where like a small kid just like kills somebody, and you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and you're like, okay, I see what's happening here. We now know who Michael is. We don't know that this is Michael Myers, but we know this kid, Michael, just killed this girl. And we don't even necessarily, if I remember right, we don't even necessarily know that it's his sister. I mean, I think there's like some assumptions there that it's this kid, there's this older girl in the house, and then these two people, when they come home, Pete, I think it's Peter Myers and Edith Myers are his parents, and there's this big reveal and the camera pulls back. It's just a great scene, and very much could have been my favorite of this entire film. But the next two that are coming, I feel like just like squeak out just a little bit more for me. That makes me love them a little bit more. But yeah, the Judith Myers death scene was just so good, like so fantastic. Absolutely love that scene, and it was so well done. I also look at when you compare it to like the Rob Zombie's Halloween, that in itself was creepy too. I don't like it nearly as much because A, it's not the original, but B, it didn't have the same impact for me as this, as it did in 1978. But what I will say is I really liked in the Rob Zombie's film, I really liked the fact that they had Michael in the clown costume, but then they put on the Michael mask, like the white mask. I thought that was just a really cool and creepy thing when, Judith is going down the hallway and she's already been stabbed and she's bleeding, and you see this little kid walking after her, and he's got this big oversized mask on. I thought that was really cool too. But for me, the Judith Myers death scene is it's iconic, it's classic, and it would be my third favorite from this particular film. So moving on to our final two, this was really tough for me because these two scenes are so good. So good. The buildup, the creep factor, everything about them are just phenomenal. But when I sat down and I made my list of what this was going to look like, I had to have one winner. I had to pick one. And that one is going to, well, let me just tell you, I'll tell you what my second favorite is. My second favorite is the Bob death scene. This is post Bob and Linda getting it on. They're upstairs and they're at the Wallace house, which I think is just super weird. It's not their house. They they didn't break in, but they went in thinking that Annie was going to be there. And so they say they get in, they do their thing. And then she's like, go get me a beer. And he's like, you get me a beer. And she's like, she like nudges him like, hey, I just let you do whatever you just did to me. Go get me a freaking beer. So he gets up and he leaves and he goes downstairs. And then you just get this awesome scene where the house is quiet. The Wallace house is quiet. There's no lights on. And he kind of stops because there's this, the door is I believe the door is like partially propped open or something. And, he just is kind of like, well, wait a second. Somebody is here. Like we're not the only ones here. And he says something about, Annie or something like that. And at the same time, Michael, I'm not sure if he bursts through a closet or just another adjacent room or what it is, but you get this awesome scene where Michael just like bum rushes him and grabs him by the throat, and he's choking him out. He's got him pressed up against the wall, and then he slowly raises him up off the floor, and you see like Bob's feet kick in, and then he reaches up, and Michael just one time just stabs him to the wall, just like a painting. He pulls him to the wall, and the expression on Bob's face, because the expression on Bob's face, I think what he did with that scene versus what, the Annie death scene, Bob's death face, if you will, looked so much more real to me because it was like this look of fear, this look of terror, this look of realization that he is dying, he is going to die, and he's staring down because he's kind of up on the wall, but he's staring down at this killer in a white mask. And that scene, the way that his face looks is just super creepy and super real for me. And then his body just kind of goes limp and you see his feet just hang there. But then just to make it so much more creepy, you get Michael Myers doing that classic like head turn thing where he just kind of like looks up at him like this is like he's admiring his own work, like a dog, which is, I believe, how John Carpenter had directed Nick Castle. He said, look at him like a dog would look at whatever at its owner or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but Nick Castle just did that iconic like head tilt. And it was that, to me, sells that scene so much too, because it's just like, wow, this dude is messed up. He's standing back and he is truly just admiring what it is that he just did to this guy. And now he's hanging on the wall. So that scene, to me, it's a favorite. This whole film from start to finish is one that I really have a tough time ever looking away. Like we've talked about this on the show before too. Like I could sit there and watch probably any other film in the franchise. And there are moments where you kind of just lose interest for a second or two, and you might answer a text quick, or jump on Facebook or Instagram real quick and just see if there's any updates, whatever it might be. And then you put your phone back down and you go back to the film. Halloween is not like that. And the reason it's not like that is because of scenes like this, that they're just so well done. The cinematography, the lighting, everything, the score, obviously, those special moments when the music really intensifies the situation, they're just great. And that's why it's my favorite film, not only of the franchise, but my favorite film of all time. So Bob's death is my second favorite death, which leads me and leaves me with only one death remaining. It leads me to Linda's death. Now, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I listed Linda's death as my all-time favorite death of the entire franchise. So that's why I had a tough time trying to put Bob's ahead of Linda's, because Linda's is just so good. Once again, you get this buildup, this creep factor that happens with this. And for the first time in the entire franchise, you see Michael Myers toying with his victims. I mean, he truly is toying with her by hiding himself under a disguise. He doesn't even want her to know that it's this killer. He wants her to think that this is possibly her boyfriend that's playing tricks on her. So we obviously just got in basically in consecutive order, we got this Bob death scene. You get the scene where Michael cocks his head and he looks, and then immediately we cut to Linda laying in bed, and I believe she's filing her nails. She's enjoying the bliss of just getting thrown down at the Wallace house. And here she is. She's the pumpkin is next to her, and she's just filing her nails. She's just living life. And she just wants a beer. She just wants Bob to bring her back a freaking beer. And here we go. The door slowly swings open and Linda looks up, and there is a dude standing in a bed sheet with the eye holes cut out and Bob's glasses on his face. Now, if it had just been, this ghost figure, if you will, with the eye holes, that in itself would have been creepy. The fact that Michael took the time to take these like Coke bottle glasses off of Bob after he was dead, put them on himself over the white sheet that is making this ghost costume, that to me sells this thing, because this is like Michael is toying with her. He wants her to think that he is Bob. There's a trust factor there. He wants her to be relaxed. He wants her to not think that she is about to get murdered. And as I've always talked about, Michael is working as a killer. Michael is working on his victim's timeline. He's not working on his own. He could have very easily just walked upstairs, busted through the door, and gone in and stabbed her right in bed, but he didn't do that. He wanted her to make the move. So he opens the door very slowly. She's like, give me a beer. Did you give me a beer? Give me a beer. And she kind of gets irritated with him, and she stands up and she goes and she picks up the phone and she goes and calls Lori. And at the same time, this is when Michael moves in and he begins to strangle her. There's kind of a little bit of a struggle there, and he grabs the phone cord and he pulls it nice and tight around her neck. She's struggling, and at the same time, Lori has picked up the phone and she's hearing these kind of gagging noises and this noise of Linda struggling to breathe. And Lori's trying to figure out if this is some sort of prank. And at the same time, Linda grabs Michael and she pulls the white sheet down, and it pulls the sheet down over his mask. And you really, this is truly like the scene here where we really see Michael's face close up, because eventually, Linda dies. Oh, and we forgot all about the, you see anything you like, that whole shot. Awesome. Loved it as like a 10-year-old watching this movie. Love it as a 38-year-old watching this movie. Great scene for obvious reasons. But you see now Michael's mask for the very first time. And it's like, okay, this is freaking creepy, because we'd seen Michael's face from a distance. We'd seen him hidden. We'd seen him sort of, like the scene where he's standing in Lori's backyard and the everything is blowing around, or the sheets are blowing around. Like, you really don't see it up close and personal, but now you see it up close and personal. And Michael lifts his head up, because I'm sure Linda had fallen to the ground. So he's kind of picks himself back up, and he grabs the phone and he puts it to his mask. And that is the first time that you get that just awesome scene. And you know exactly what this dude looks like. And all Michael is doing is just breathing. That's all he's doing. And that scene for me sums up Halloween. I know Austin and I have kind of talked, like, if you had to show one scene of the entire franchise, if you had to show one scene to a person to say, this is what the franchise is about, this is what Halloween is, these are what the Halloween films are about. Austin has talked about like the iconic 2018 scene where like Michael, it's like the super long extended scene where Michael walks and grabs the hammer and he goes in and he like bashes the lady in the head, and like that whole scene, which I agree, it's a great scene and it probably is like the best scene to possibly show somebody. But if nobody had ever seen a Halloween film before, and I wanted to show them something and say, okay, this is why you need to be convinced that this is a great franchise and you should check out these films, I would probably have to show them the Linda death scene, because I just think it's so well done. It's so creepy. It has that factor of, not only is it scary and creepy, but it's Michael toying with her. It's Michael being Michael, where he, once again, like I said, he's working on his victim's timeline. He's not working on his timeline. He could have just gone after her, but he chose to just wait and play with her a little bit, let her make the mistake by picking up the phone. She turns his back on him, and that's when he goes after her. I love it. I think it's so well done. PJ Souls did such an awesome job in that scene, and that's why, for me, that is the best death scene of John Carpenter's 1978 classic Halloween. So now this is where I'm going to throw it over to Austin. Austin's going to talk about what his favorite death scenes are from worst to best, and we'll see how they compare.
Thank you, Blaine. It is good to be back. Sorry, we couldn't get this done together today, but I'm really excited to give you my picks for ranking the Halloween 1978 kills from least favorite to most favorite. And I think Blaine had a really good point there, saying, it's really hard to be like, this is the worst kill of this movie, because going back and thinking about this film, like, it is, much like Blaine said, one of those movies that it's hard to really even turn away from for more than a moment, because it is the thing that built up this incredible franchise that we care about so much. So I'm really excited to jump into my ranking of the kills in Halloween 1978, and I'll start it off the same way Blaine did. I think our mechanic, our strong blue collar worker, unfortunately has to take the L in this film, just because he's an off-screen death, much like Lindsay's dog Lester. You don't rank up at the top by being an off-screen death, but definitely cool, and kind of sets the pace. I will say one thing about the mechanic death that Blaine kind of touched on as well is it is the moment of like, oh shit, not only is Michael back, and there is some question of like, you have to put yourself in the shoes of somebody from 1978, going, okay, is he going back to like go kill his doctor? Is he, what is his motivation? Obviously, the dude is up to no good. We are introduced in the first scene in a kill I will talk about much later. That obviously this guy is, he's probably not here to hand out free hugs at the local mall. No, the mechanic death is what it is. It sets a tone, and it is kind of the first moment of like, okay, this dude is here to cause some mayhem. So I will jump right into my next favorite pick, which is, I believe this is where we start differing. I could be wrong. But this next pick, no, I think this was Blaine's next pick as well. This next kill is Annie. And, it is really a shame that, the death itself was not acted, maybe to the level that we would have appreciated in this film. But obviously Annie is kind of one of those classic scenes. I think we see it in a lot of films now. I think the most recent memory I can come up with, without Blaine to give me shit for being a nerd on, is in the newest The Batman film, where the Riddler is behind, I don't know if he's like the DA or what this guy is, I forget. But you see the breath, the condensation on the inside of the vehicle, and something's up. And I think, we've talked and recently we did a video on like if Annie was the true starting target for this film. And it really would be a lot more fun to theorize about that if the Annie death was a little bit more cinematic. But obviously you have this great buildup. Michael is really stalking the hell out of her. When she's doing laundry, when she's getting stuck, you almost think she's going to get stuck when she gets stuck. But she does not. She ends up going to the car, and sure enough, the condensation on the window tells the whole story. And what I love about this is it's almost the old school way of like not showing the monster, in a very clear shot until kind of the final act. And we see, our first real great look at the mask in this scene that Michael is wearing. But it is still foggy. It is still questionable on, just what the shape looks like in this film at that point. But do love Annie's death. Choosing least favorite to favorite in this film is like choosing your favorite kid. But Annie is definitely the redheaded stepchild of the major deaths in this film. But still love it. Still look back on that scene and every Halloween. I mean, it is tough talking about these films sometimes, because these are films we watch, Blaine and I, once a year. I mean, I really don't watch this wonderful classic movie other than the actual day of Halloween. And I look forward to it all year, but it's almost like, man, I gotta like watch it like 2 or 3 times and take some notes, so that way they're a little bit fresher in my mind, especially when we're doing this podcast. But maybe we'll be breaking some rules here on this channel sooner rather than later. But regardless, Annie's death is going to come in at that kind of second from last tier for me. And moving right into the next one. Now, this is where Blaine and I really differ. And here's what I'll say too, is like listening to Blaine's picks, I had written down my ranking. And listening to Blaine's picks, I was like, oh, he has really good points for why each of these land where they land for him. And again, it is hard to go through and rank these when they are just part of my favorite film of all time. But we're differing very heavily here, and it's not to say that it doesn't deserve to be at the one spot for another person, but it's not there for me. I'm going with Linda, who ended up being Blaine's favorite kill in the film. Here at what would it be? My third spot here. Blaine has a lot of great points for why this is the best kill in this film, and I agree with them all. I think this is really a great classic telling. Again, Blaine talked about, like, if you were going to show somebody just a scene from one of these films, I think this would absolutely be a deserving kill scene to show somebody that's never heard of Michael Myers before, because it really is. The true spirit of Michael Myers is in this kill. Obviously you get Michael really toying with his victims, wearing the one of my favorite looks of Michael Myers. And check out Blaine and Marie's video on Marie's channel regarding kind of the drippiest fits of Michael Myers, where the two of them talk about this fit as well. And that is the do they talk about it? I think they might have missed it, actually. I'll have to go back and rewatch. But regardless, great video. But it is the sheet with the two eye holes cut out. And then like Blaine mentioned, he took the time. Now just think about Michael Myers here. He is a guy wearing a probably a shirt, probably some boxers, maybe it was briefs. Not sure about the etiquette of the time in the late 70s. On top of that layer, he has a used, dirty, smelly mechanics jumpsuit, probably thick, probably, a little stiff from stuck oil and God knows what else. On top of that, with that layer, he has a latex mask. On top of that, he has a white cutout sheet with eye holes. On top of that, he has those Coke bottle glasses. My man was layering up. He was in a drippy fit that day. But it is one of the coolest looks of Michael Myers, showing up with the glasses. I mean, it is great. It's kind of funny going back, and I don't know how tall the Bob actor is in the Rob Zombie remake, but I feel like that scene hits a little bit different when you're like, from Linda's perspective, like, okay, this like 7 foot tall giant, clearly not my boyfriend. But maybe the Bob actor is tall. It's hard to kind of place him in that film as far as how he would really stack up, to Tyler Mane. Especially because Tyler Mane does end up lifting him and giving him the old poke. But regardless, in 1978, when we're dealing with a much more regular body type of Michael Myers, the fact that he was able to trick Linda in this scene is pretty great. Obviously, she was expecting her man to come back with some beer and just be a good boyfriend, good buddy. I'm not really sure what their relationship truly was. But Linda is expecting her man to come in, and unfortunately it is not her man, because her man has been kind of kebabbed downstairs. But Linda, obviously there is that like, well, what are you doing? And, the confusion, and she ends up calling Lori, and we get a great first true shot of Michael in the mask behind Linda as he chokes her out with the telephone cord. Unfortunately, you weren't born in the 2020, or you weren't born in the early 2000s where you'd have a wireless cell phone, Linda. It is just a product of the times. You got choked out old Alexander Graham Bell style. And, for that, you land here on my list. I think it's a wonderful kill. Obviously, we've got two more on the board that I do rank higher. And even though this was Blaine's favorite kill, I think he would understand why this landed where it landed for me. But it really is just a fantastic part of this film. Again, great scene to show somebody if they've never seen the Halloween films before. But Linda is going to come in there right in the middle for me. Not to say that kill was mid. It just, the other two have a very special place in my heart. And, like most of our picks, when we have two left, you often know one and the other where they land for me. So I will start out with my second favorite kill of the franchise. And this might have been Blaine's number 2, the silver pick for him as well. But I got to go with Judith Myers, the first kill. Shout out Sandy Johnson, the first guest on Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. If you want to see Blaine and I still not really knowing what we're doing, I think it was like literally episode 2 of the podcast. If not 2, then episode 3 at latest. But if you really want to see us really struggling to figure it out, and still managing to get a great interview with the lovely Sandy Johnson, go back and check out that video after this one. She is a sweetheart. Got to talk to her at age 45 as well, and took some pictures with her. She is just as nice off camera as she was on camera. But when she was not on a webcam for our show, years before that, she was in Halloween 1978 as Judith. And it is really the scene that kicks it off. You got to, again, put yourself back in the shoes of somebody who has never seen this franchise and go back to 1978 where, this kind of stuff was revolutionary. Seeing a first person viewpoint, long shot, cinematic masterpiece right at the beginning of this film, where everything was methodically put in. Now, I guess there is a cut somewhere in there, but it does appear to the viewers to be one continuous shot, which really puts a great tone at the beginning of this film. I love the way 1978 opens up. It's always chilled me from the point I was a kid watching it for the first time. Seeing, through the killer's eyes. I think when I put on a mask, anytime I'm putting on a mask, whether it's Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, or, any mask you put on, I have to go back to that scene, seeing the eye cuts form into that like kind of figure 8 shape, very similar to what it looks like when you're wearing a mask. Like, it was just very well thought out. But then Michael, who you don't know much about him, you see a little bit of his cuff as he pulls the knife out of the drawer. So you're like, okay, this guy's in a costume. But again, to Blaine's point, I think I've always had the luxury of knowing that this killer was the young child Michael Myers. But to Blaine's point, like, you put yourself back in the shoes of somebody watching it for the first time, you don't know that. And you go upstairs, and there is this young lady who is brushing her hair after, just the quickest session of all time with I don't even remember her boyfriend's name. Doesn't matter. He wasn't doing anything big in life, guaranteed. But the aftercare could have saved a life there. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, Judith is up there. She's like, hey, I just had myself a pretty subpar time. I'm just going to brush my hair out, maybe start this whole day over. It's Halloween. Anything can happen. Well, unfortunately for Judith, her little brother is creeping around the stairs. And, she's got a little bit of like, yo, dude, I'm naked, or at least, half naked. This is, get out. And then you realize he's got just the biggest knife of all time. And things go sideways from there. But it is really the point. You see Judith go like, Michael, and it's not in a sense of like terrified, but more so just confused. And it leads into kind of the questions of like, that you don't have with Rob Zombie's, where you're going like, why would this kid do this? In Rob Zombie's remake, it's very much like, oh yeah, I completely understand why this kid would want to murder everyone in his family, the friends, everybody. Like, yeah, no, it checks out. Just in one simple line of Michael, you get a little bit of context of like, okay, this kid this isn't something he's known for doing. It is really sets the tone for the Michael that I prefer, That's just a kid that snapped one day. And I think because I love the idea of you know, a young boy who really didn't have any problems in life, was just living a regular life, snapping, going silent, and becoming the you know, the Shape. I think it is just such a cool scene for me, because it is the birth of this Shape that we've come to know and love in the strangest sense throughout this franchise. And you know, I went on a long talk about the psychology of Michael Myers, why I find him scary, in one of our earlier videos as well. And you know, I think this scene plays a lot to do with it. And obviously it ends with that brilliant shot with Michael holding the knife, his parents coming up to him and being like, "What's going on?" And it almost ends like a scene in a play where everything is frozen, the lights are going, and you're like, "What did I just watch? I just watched a little boy kill this girl, which apparently is his sister." And you know, gotta hand it to John Carpenter and Deborah Hill for creating a wonderful intro to what that movie is really all about. And it's this confusion of like, what is this guy? What makes him tick? Why did he do that? I think without being, you know, I'm a big fan of show, don't tell in film. And I think the fact that there is so much to unpack in that scene is a great example of show, don't tell. Where, again, not to shit on Rob Zombie's movies even more, but it is a little bit more tell than show. It takes a little bit more of that mystery out, and leaves the viewers with less to really digest. And it's been 46 years here in October. We're still digesting it. So that has to come in. It gets the silver medal for me. And ultimately that leaves us with one beautiful, long-haired, Coke bottle glassed man. And that is Bob. And I know, you know, I get why Bob wasn't the top pick for Blaine, but when I think of kills from Halloween 1978, in fact, brother, when I think of kills by the Shape, by Mr. Michael Myers, it's hard not to think about the Bob kill. It's hard not to, you know, I as much as the Linda kill is a great example of Michael's cat and mouse playing with his prey, Bob is a weird kill that I think sticks with people and has stuck with people for 45 plus years. Because, you know, previous to this, Michael's been making some pretty swift, you know, get the job done kills. Obviously, he's playing with them. He's stalking them. He's doing his thing. I think Bob's probably the guy he spends the least amount of time on. And maybe that's why you get to savor that kill so much. The fact that he lifts Bob up. First of all, he catches him by surprise. Bob is not in the state of mind. He was just having some good times with Linda. He's about to go grab himself a beer. He's in high school, man. Everything is good. Everything is chill. It's Halloween night. I'm drinking beers in an old house, you know, just me and my lady. And then all of a sudden, this dude pops around the corner. Holy shit! It's the end of me. And like Blaine said, you do see that in his face. But the reason I think this kill stands out so much is the method of the kill. He sticks him to the wall like a painting. And then I think the reason why people still go back to this and why I go back to this is it's the first time you see Michael give the little head turn, little head tilt. And what does that mean, man? I think that's the first time you're like, okay, not only is this dude like, whatever, killed his sister however many years ago, he's killed a couple people. Clearly, he's on a mission of no good. But there is, you know, and obviously this is before he plays with Linda to a very like visible degree. But he kills him, and the kill is brutal enough. I mean, the guy is stuck to the wall. His toes are hanging. But you get you get that head tilt, and you're like, what is this dude's mentality? And it is very animalistic. It's just very strange, and I think it gives you a lot of context that, like, okay, maybe we're dealing with somebody that's not just pissed off, not just angry or just a madman. There's something else there. And the fact that he's in that brilliant mask just hides even more, to the point where Michael is such a question mark in this film. And it leaves me with a very uneasy, confused feeling, which is exactly what I want from The Shape. And so that is why Bob takes the cake at my favorite kill of Halloween 1978. But like I said, outside of maybe the mechanic or Lester, R.I.P. Lester, you were kind of barking a lot, though. Outside of those two, any way you rank these kills of this movie are completely viable. I think this is, because it is a masterclass in horror cinema, you can take it whatever way you want. Whatever really sticks with you, whatever really resonates, go with that. And with that, I'd like to say, throw your rankings of the kills in the chat. If you're watching live, throw them in the live chat. I'd love to see personally how different kills affect different people, or if you align more so with Blaine or myself when it comes to either Linda or Bob as your favorite kill. I think there's great arguments for both. I hope I did a good enough job explaining my side. I know it happens so much quicker than the Linda death, but it is, when I think about Michael Myers, that is one of the kills you got to have in your brain. Whether it's your favorite or not, it's just kind of one of those iconic scenes in this franchise. And ultimately, this movie itself is filled with so many iconic scenes. It's why we're talking about it on a podcast 45 years later. That is, it is a short list of kills for Michael Myers as we know him now. But in the day, that was all we had to do to show you just what kind of methodical, great white shark Michael Myers is in Halloween 1978. So, like I said, let me know, let Blaine know, who's full of shit, who's got the better picks. It's probably going to be Blaine, but I know there's some people out there looking out for me. So let us know what you think, who you might align with more in this side, and as well, just give us your ranking, because clearly Blaine and I, we're 64 episodes into this show, something like that. And we're still obsessed with the discussion of Michael Myers, talking with all you wonderful folks at home whenever we can. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this kind of chopped and screwed episode of Halloween Lives. We each got to have our moment today. No talking over each other, no brotherly rivalry. But we did want to make sure that we both were here today. I think it's always more fun when there is another person to kind of bounce off of, even in this setting. And so I hope you guys appreciated this video. I hope you guys liked it. If this is your first time here, welcome to Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. We do this shit every freaking week. So, see ya on Friday next week. Hopefully Blaine and I will figure out our schedules. It's more so on me, guys. It's more so on me, but we'll figure it out. We'll get back together for another episode of Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. Jesus. And I can't wait to see you then. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw here today, hit that like button down there. If you really liked it, hit the subscribe button. Apparently, I saw a TikTok clip. This could be complete bullshit. Apparently, when you tell people to subscribe to your video now, it glows down here or however you're watching this video. So I'm going to say it one time real loud. Subscribe. to Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. We will see you next time. This has been Blaine and then Austin Duncan, and looking forward to seeing you again next Friday. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good rest of your day.